I'm JJ Virgin, PhD dropout, sorry mom, turned 4-time New York Times bestselling author. Yes, I'm a certified nutrition specialist, fitness Hall of Famer, and I speak at health conferences and trainings around the globe. But I'm driven by my insatiable curiosity and love of science to keep asking questions, digging for answers, and sharing the information I uncover with as many people as I can. And that's why I created the Well Beyond 40 podcast, to synthesize and simplify the science of health into actionable strategies to help you thrive. In each episode, we'll talk about what's working in the world of wellness, from personalized nutrition and healing your metabolism to healthy aging and prescriptive fitness. Join me on the journey to better health so you can love how you look and feel right now and have the energy to play full out at 100. Hey, it's JJ here. And I got this comment on I think it was on Apple iTunes. It says, JJ, thank you for a great podcast with bite-sized pieces of advice to keep us informed about health. In one of your episodes, you mentioned to let you know if we want to know about your workout routine. So here it is. What is your workout routine? More specifically, I've heard that lifting heavy is good, but do you recommend lifting heavy every time I go to the gym? Currently, I go 3 times a week. Or should one day be heavy and others be exhausting after the 3rd rep? Love to know. So I asked the team, I go, should I go do a whole thing on my routine? And I'll tell you, full disclosure, at the time of this recording, I am counting down to my 60th birthday, and I am fired up. In fact, there was a study, I'm trying to remember where I heard about the study, but basically the study said that if you are fired up, excited, positive about aging, you live 7 years longer. So I'm staying fired up, excited, and positive. And so part of that is I've been massively up-leveling. I've been training for my 60th. And boy, have I seen some shifts. It's been super exciting. I'm actually lifting. I used to lift heavy, heavy weights now in my 20s, like 45-pound dumbbell chest presses, things like that. And I remember some of my guy friends at the time were like, what's the goal? I think at the time they were bothered that I was lifting as heavy a weight as they were. And I kind of calmed it down. I'm back at it, man. And I kind of a mantra now with aging, because here's what happens as we age, but it doesn't have to. And that's the important thing. Starting at age 40, if left unchecked, you lose up to 1% of your muscle mass every year, which starts to double at age 60. But worse, 2 to 4% of your strength and even more of your power. I'm going to define all those things in a moment. And as we age, we become what's called anabolically resistant, meaning that we have trouble breaking down our protein and then using those amino acids to build muscle. We have trouble going through muscle protein synthesis. And some of this is some of the hormonal stuff, estrogen's an anabolic hormone, so is testosterone, cortisol's coming up as we age, we're getting more insulin resistant. So some of it's all that flux that we need to deal with. And some of it is just, we're not doing what we need to do. And by the way, that 150 minutes of moderate exercise a week, toss that out. That goes the way of the stupid protein recommendations too. That is not going to have you being built to last and playing full out at 100, my friends. And so we are disregarding those dumb recommendations because they're not going to get you to where you want to be. So I'm going to walk you through really how you look at fitness, and then how you identify where you are now, and then what I'm actually doing, because that was what was asked. And I'll also tell them I'm constantly upgrading this thing too. You got to change things up. So first of all, how do you really look at fitness? And when you look at fitness, there's 5 different ways it gets defined. One is strength, one is stamina, one is balance, one is flexibility, and one is agility. Now, when I think about strength, that's where I really start to look at muscle. I think about muscle. We've got strength, we've got hypertrophy or size, and we've got power. And so strength is really okay, the amount of force that you can use, or the amount of weight that you can lift, right? So that's a one time, how much can I pick up, move around? Endurance is how many times you can move that weight without getting to failure. And power is the ability of the body to perform an activity quickly and repeatedly. When I'm designing something, just because you're doing a program, there's a program that you could design for strength, for stamina, for hypertrophy, they're all a little different. So I'll talk about that, because we also want to make sure that we have hypertrophy going on as we age, but we also want to make sure that we're maintaining strength and power. And then I think of stamina. When I think of stamina, sure, there's the stamina of muscle and lifting, but for this, what I'm really looking at is stamina in terms of cardio. And when I think of a cardiovascular workout, I think of it in a couple different ways. I think, first of all, high intensity interval training. And even within that, there's the super high intensity interval training or sprint training within that. And then there's also what's known as zone 2, which is just below. It's where you're working out, you sound breathy, but you can carry on a conversation. It's like 60 to 70% of your target heart rate. And so those are the two areas I really focus on in cardio. And I'll show you where I use them, especially with zone 2 after a meal is amazing because it lowers the blood sugar response to the meal, sucks the carbs into the working muscles. And then balance and flexibility, huge. By the way, so a couple crazy statistics, and I don't have the exact ones right here, but they're all over the place. And we will find them and put them in the show notes. How's that? The team loves it when I do this. But turns out that grip strength is correlated with all-cause mortality. People of weak grip strengths have higher risk of every type of death. That's what all-cause mortality, any which way you go. Also turns out that someone who's got less muscle mass is at a higher risk for death than someone who's got more body fat. So it is worse for you to lose muscle than it is for you to gain fat. And in fact, you're better off having more fat, more muscle than having less fat, less muscle. So muscle is super duper important. And of course, grip strength is going to go along with muscle, really, not perfectly one-to-one, but it does. Then, in terms of cardiovascular fitness, the people that were at the lowest end of cardiovascular fitness had 400% higher all-cause mortality risk than people at the high end of cardiovascular fitness. Then you look at balance and failure to be able to stay on one foot for 10 seconds. I mean, come on, 10 seconds, high risk of all-cause mortality. So this is not a vanity play here. Yes, you will look better naked if you're doing these things. Yes, you will. You'll look better, in a short sleeve shirt. Right. Yes, you will. But that's not the point. And this is why I want people to stop focusing on losing weight and start focusing on putting on muscle. It takes care of everything. It's your metabolic strength, right? But then balance and flexibility. So balance, again, super important as we age. And this is where I use yoga. And I also make sure that when I'm doing resistance training, I'm doing big ranges of motion to improve flexibility. They used to say, if you weight train, you'll get less flexible. Not true if you're doing good range of motion. And then agility. And this is where, we as adults do not have any fun. I remember asking someone, and then I kind of turned that question back on myself because I was asking a client, hey, when was the last time you had fun? And I kind of looked at myself, hey, Missy, when was the last time you had fun? Like, what are you doing to play? What are you doing out there in the world? Like, are you going out and doing any sports? Have you taken up pickleball? Like, what are the new things? Because you can teach an old dog new tricks. And for agility, for reaction time, think ping pong, pickleball, paddleboarding, things that cause, rotational movements, things that cause, quick shifts. So you have to go, I have to move, like tap dancing, which I keep threatening to do again. Sadly, my old broken foot's just not working with me, but we'll see. But what sport can you put in that's going to involve that? Or could you throw in some plyometrics? I actually did a lot of my graduate work, it's all coming back to haunt me. One of them was doing spinal lifting biomechanics and the fastest way to build strength. And the other one project I did was all on plyometrics. And we actually designed a plyometric class back in the 80s. And the funniest thing was it was too hard. Back then, all the classes, fitness classes, were 50 to 60 minutes. This class people were dead in 10 minutes and we didn't know what to do. Now I'm like, I know exactly how to work with this. But back then, there was no such thing. Like, people didn't understand the high intensity interval training. But plyometrics is another way to really do this, jump training. So I say all that because you want to be thinking about all these things as you're putting a fitness program together. I've thought about it, so you don't need to. How's that? But, how do we measure success on this fitness program? Well, one of the things is through body composition. Now, I am really, really a stickler on this. I know there's all this stuff about the scale, and I think the scale is just the stupidest thing. We've got to have a bioimpedance scale. Just knowing your weight, not knowing what that weight is made up of, is a meaningless data. Let's say me, I weigh 150 pounds. If I weigh 150 pounds and I'm 30% body fat, that is an entirely different body composition and healthy body composition rather than, let's say, I'm 20% body fat. So you got to know what your weight is made up of. So bioimpedance scale is great for that. And then going once or twice a year once, and really I think it should be twice a year, and getting a DEXA scan, because we need to see how much of your body is lean mass versus fat. And then we need to go farther than that, because not only do we need to know what your body fat is, we really need to know what is visceral adipose tissue. What's that fat around the organs? That's the fat that matters, right? And that's where a tape measure and is perfect in betweens to measure as well. And then we want to know how much of your lean mass is skeletal mass. And how are you looking there? Because that's that thing that we can really improve. When we improve skeletal mass, we'll improve metabolism, immune function, growth hormone, bone density, like just the list goes on and on and on, because muscle is a metabolic organ. It's an endocrine organ. It's not just there holding everything in tighter, right? It's a sugar sponge, gives your body a place to store amino acids and carbohydrates rather than storing those carbs on your belly. But it also is the first place we can start to restore insulin sensitivity. Okay, and again, it is literally healthier to have more muscle and more fat than to have less muscle and less fat. That's why we got to get off of this. I got to lose weight. No. Because if you lose weight and lose a bunch of muscle, you made yourself worse, not better. We want to hold on to and build muscle, then drop fat. And guess what? If you focus on the muscle, the rest will come. I say this because frailty is like the biggest scary risk as we age. And this is why the earlier you were when you started weight training, the better. But wherever you are now, start. If you haven't started yet, start now. Okay. Single most important thing, because we want to avoid sarcopenia. And it was really interesting when my 16-year-old son was in the hospital and I watched him go from, being basically a 180-pound guy, big 6 feet tall guy, down to 145. And I was like watching him, become catabolic and waste away. And I started hammering him with amino acids and starting to get all the movement I possibly could with him so that I could avoid this, because frailty is a very dangerous thing. Frailty is sarcopenia. And how would you know? This is why you need to get a DEXA scan done. You need to be able to check at home with a bioimpedance scale, because the big way you'd know is muscle weakness. But, people think this is natural aging. No, this is because you're sitting on the couch and you're not eating enough protein. Okay. Very problematic. It's because you're not active and you're not eating the right way. And remember, even just eating an inflammatory diet can block muscle protein synthesis. And here's what's scary about sarcopenia. Up to 11% of the 50 and 60-year-olds out there have this. This should not be happening at 50 and 60. And ideally, it does not have to happen. When I was doing my PhD work at University of Southern California, I was in the exercise phys department, but my focus was exercise physiology, gerontology, aging, and nutrition. We had master athletes in there who were killing it at 90 years old. So none of this stuff has to happen. Yes, you will have some muscle loss. Yes, you'll have some strength loss, but it will be like a fraction of what happens when people are not active and not eating correctly. So ways you can tell where you're at, again, a balance test, standing on one leg, grip strength. I actually got a little hand dynamometer. They cost like $30. This is a great thing to have to monitor your strength. And I will tell you that I did a grip strength test, fully expecting to exceed everything. And my grip strength was in the ideal range, was at the higher level of the ideal range, but I didn't get into the next category, which said strong. And I'm like, you can imagine how my competitive little self felt. So I am now going to be working more strength into my program, because hypertrophy and strength are not the same. You can do for your cardiovascular fitness, there's a Rockport, I think it's a 1 mile walk test or a 12-minute walk test, but it basically is your walking speed. You can also do a 1-minute step test on a 12-inch box and see how fast your heart rate recovers down. Also, a lot of the bikes have a little fitness test, a predicted VO2 max test on them. And what you're really looking to is how high your heart rate's going and then how quickly it's returning back down. And then, of course, flexibility. Hey, can you touch your toes, right? A sit and reach test, a touch your toes test. So that's where you want to see where you're at. And the reason I bring those up is because we need to design the right fitness program for you. Now, if you're super duper flexible, then we do not need to focus on that. If you've been doing loads of cardio your whole life, we can probably just focus on cardio 2 days a week. Or maybe you've been like me and I'm like, I will default to the gym above everything else. So I actually had to say, you know what? I'm going to like start to make sure I'm getting that cardio burst training in. I'm getting the yoga in because those are not my natural state of happiness. And I need to make sure they're doing it. So that's what I say when I look at this. Now, naturally, I'm going to tend to focus you towards resistance training because as we age, we are losing that. And so I really want to make sure that you put that in as a priority. So I think for the majority of us, we are going to want to hit each muscle group minimally 2 days a week, up to 3 times a week. So depending on if you're splitting up your muscles or if you're doing them all at once, that's either going to be 2, 3, or 4 days in the gym. But generally, I'll have people do 3 days, all body parts, or 4 days, and I'll have them do split routines, 2 days each. Okay. So again, think about where you are deficient, right? So I'm going to start first with resistance training. And it's interesting. Back when I was in school, there was like these very specific parameters on how you were supposed to do things. They've loosened up some. Now, we know that for strength. Now, first, if you have never done resistance training before, my big recommendation is to hire a personal trainer to help you set up a program. You do not need to work with them every single time. And I think we don't know the best way to use a personal trainer. And again, look for someone like who is NASM, NCS, National Strength and Conditioning Association, National Association of Sports Medicine, American College of Sports Medicine. Look for someone who has got a really smart certification. Those are all great certifications. But what they can do is set up a program for you, make sure that you are operating in good form. That is so important. And then they can revise that program for you every 6 to 12 weeks. So that's a great use of a trainer. You're going to design a program that helps you with your strength and your hypertrophy. Now, let me give you some kind of strength, hypertrophy, stamina ideas. Strength, when we first start weight training, so the first, let's say 4 to 6 weeks, your strength training, a lot of what's going to be happening is more like neural learning. Your nervous system and your muscles are learning how to talk together. So a lot of what happens is you'll see a strength increase, but not a big hypertrophy increase yet. That takes a little longer. So if you're new to this, I just want you to know that. For absolute strength, and whenever I say these things, this is the heaviest weight you can handle in this repetition range in good form. Okay, that's important. If your form goes, stop, right? And what we're really trying to get to is as close to failure, I can't do another one, as possible. So for strength, that range is 1 to 5 repetitions. And a repetition is you have a set. Let's say that you are doing overhead presses where you're pushing a dumbbell over your head. That's the exercise, overhead presses. A set is a group of repetitions. So if I did 12 repetitions, that would be 1 set of 12. I can do multiple sets. I can do repetition ranges, and then I have rest breaks. In general, the harder you're going to do, like if you're going to do big strength pushes, you'll probably need a little longer time to recover. And you want to give yourself at least a minute. But some of these things you might take up to 5 minutes to recover. But generally, I find for people, it's 1 to 2 minutes of recovery. And one of the things that's happening when you start to work in the hypertrophy range, which tends to be 8 to 15, but there's no magic. Like there isn't some magic thing that happens between, rep 5 and rep 8, right? 8 to 12 used to be like, this is the hypertrophy range. Now it's like, it could be 15. It could even be up to 30. But what I like to think of as 8 to 15 is my hypertrophy range. 20 to 30 is where I focus more on stamina. Yes, you will have hypertrophy in there too. But I use those because these 3 things help me shift my resistance training around. So I'm continuing to change it up. So strength ranges might be 1 to 5. And generally I'll do like 5 of those. So I might do, 5 sets of 3 reps. Hypertrophy, 8 to 15. I'll do 3 to 4 of those. Stamina, 20 to 30, I tend to do 2 of those and I hate it. So I make myself vary it up. Now you could vary it within the workout or you can vary it within the week. And then also I'm throwing into there at least 1 day a week, some plyometrics. Those are jump types of training. And that is things like jumping jacks, could be a squat jump, can be jumping up and down on a box. Could be what's called a speed skater or jumping side lunge, burpees. You can use a TRX to do a jumping side squat. There's a lot of different things that you can do there. I'm just letting you know this. I have on my list to do, my endless list to do, I'm sure you can relate, to create my Built to Last exercise program where I teach these things. you're going to want to get ideally to near failure on these when you get towards the last set. That's where you really want to go, I can't do another one. That's what really stimulates your muscles. If you're doing the same thing, your muscles do not need to get stimulated to grow more. You have to push more in order for your muscles to grow more. And sometimes for me, in order to get to the next heaviest weight, I have to drop it down, focus on strength, and then I move over to hypertrophy, and I'm able to keep close to that weight as I move into hypertrophy. Then I'll do hypertrophy for a while. Then I'll move into stamina, and I get close to that weight to move into stamina. And then I just keep rolling it around. Now, when I'm at the gym, I focus on compound movements. Why? Because they're more like life. In life, we're not bolted to the floor, right? In life, we're not like think of a bicep curl. Unless I don't know what you would be doing in life where you'd ever be just doing a bicep curl. I know they act like that's where you're drinking beer. I don't drink beer, but what do you ever do that's a single leg movement? And I think of the leg extension on the machine. Unless you're like a drum majorette, I don't know what you'd be doing there. So I think of compound movements, and ideally I'm using a free weight or a cable or my body weight, dumbbells, and I've incorporating some balance in, because this is more like real life. So I'm going to walk through some of these different ones for you, but that's why I'm doing it. When you're doing compound movements, you're going to pull in your core. The best way to work your core is not abs on the floor. The best way to work your core is to do things like push-ups, squats, bent over rows that require your core work. When I'm doing more muscles, I'm pulling in more energy, right? So it's going to be better for my metabolism, and it's more functional. I have divided the body into 4 parts. Number 1 is upper body pushing. And upper body pushing are things like push-ups, overhead presses, dips. They involve your chest. They involve your shoulders. They involve your triceps. Upper body pulling are things that include your biceps, your lats, and your shoulders, especially your rhomboids, rear deltoids. Hips and thighs and hinging activities involve your glutes and your quads. And you'll also pull in there some of your hamstring, right, and calves. But I really put the core exercise, the core body parts, which to me are more hamstring, back extensors, trunk extensors, rotational movements. I put that in as what I call power core. Now, I don't do a lot of focused work on the core because I do yoga and I do free weights. So I know I'm getting it, but I'll share a couple things that I do. Yes, I said do. And again, I'm going to focus on wherever I can, using dumbbells rather than a bar so that I don't create imbalances, using a single arm or a single leg where I can, and I can incorporate some balance, using cables or a TRX. I love me that TRX. I've got 2 at home. I've got one outside on the tree, and I've got one in my home gym. And that one I take with me and I travel with. I love, and I just, gosh, when I forget my TRX, that's just a sad day. But that TRX saves you, especially if you go into a gym and it's just mobbed. Like, you can always use the hotel stairwell and the TRX, and you are covered. Of course, your body weight and dumbbells. So let's start first with hips and thighs. And when I think of hips and thighs, here's the things that I love. First of all, a squat. Now, a squat is just one of the most functional things ever. You have to get up out of the chair, out of the car, off the toilet. That's a squat, right? I blew out my knee. I initially injured my knee when I was 17, blew it out in my early 20s. I mean, I've had a total knee replacement at 50 something. I've had major knee surgeries, so many of them because of this silly thing I did when I was on point ballet. And so for years, I've been modifying these, but I will tell you that I can totally do squats. And I would say what you do, if you need to work with a trainer first to be able to do these things, this is mimicking normal life. So we want to try to get into these and do them with good form, but you can always do a ball wall squat or a leg press if you need to, and you cannot do a regular squat. So you can do a squat. That's the biggest one I would focus on. Obviously, there's other things that include your hips and thighs and hinging, like plies, like leg press, like step ups, like lunges. But I love squats and single leg squats that I'll do with the TRX. Now, the other thing I do in there that really is more of a power core move, but gets the glutes, of course, gets the hamstrings, gets the erector spinae. So it kind of fits in there as a deadlift. And I do a stiff-legged deadlift. First of all, great glute exercise, great hamstring exercise. And I really focus on keeping my back extended and hinging from the hips, not the back. But, what a functional movement. I mean, these are things that we do in life is we have to stand up and then we have to pick something heavy up. That's my first one. Now for upper body pulling, I love bent over rows because again, I think of like pulling something of groceries out of the car. So I love bent over rows. You can modify that into a one arm row. I also like using at the gym, I'll do a lat pull down. This could also be a pull-up. I generally will do pull-ups. I can get about 4 pull-ups in. That's it. Meh. But I get an assist from my husband on those. So I will do pull-ups. Sometimes I'll use my TRX to do a rowing type of exercise or a pull-down, modified pull-down. You can use bands here. But my 2 favorite exercises here would be a bent over row and then either a pull-up or pull-down at the gym. That's the same exercise. If they have one of those pull-up machines, that's an assisted pull-up machine, those are fantastic. Upper body pushing. The thing I really love at upper body pushing, notice how simple I'm keeping this right now. I'm not giving you a ton of exercises. I'm having you do a squat and a deadlift. I'm having you do a bent over row and a pull down. And then I'm going to have you do a chest press. Now at home, this could be a push-up. And I want an overhead press. And I really love a standing overhead press with dumbbells because we're going to axial load your spine. You want great bone density. It's not happening from walking, okay? You need to load your spine. Squats are great for that. Overhead presses are great for that. So that is where I love that. And again, how could we divide it? You could do your squat deadlift one day and then the bent over rows chest press the next day. But I really see this and go, what if we just took these exercises and said, I'm going to go to work out and I'm going to do a squat, a deadlift, a bent over row, pull down, a chest press, and overhead press 3 days a week. And I'm going to rotate between one day I'll go in there and I will do my strength 1 to 5, 5 sets. The next time I'll go in there and I will do my hypertrophy, 3 sets, 8 to 12. My next time I'm going to go in there, I'm going to do my stamina, 2 sets of 20 to 30. And I'm going to do those so that the last set, when I'm doing it, I get to the point where I'm like, I can't do it again. I will tell you when I'm doing the hypertrophy ones, I'm getting that way on a couple of the sets. That's where you want to be. That's the progressive overload that makes your body come back stronger. We'll talk about food in a moment because that, yes, matters. Okay, so that's my resistance training. Now, if you've been around my community, you know that I was a very resistant yoga person. I avoided it like the plague. And then I went to Calavi to go speak and I took a yoga class, hated every minute of it, but realized how amazing it was and that I needed to do this. Remember I talked earlier about where are you good and where are you not? I was like in the weight room. That's what I like to do. I do weights, hiking, and HIIT. That was it. And I went, you know what? I'm going to do yoga. And I recruited Tim, my hubby, to do it with me because he is really, really disciplined. So now we go do hot yoga 1 to 2 times a week. It has been a game changer for us. We're the oldest people in the class. We went to the class with all the young yogis who are literally like 20 and 30 and, doing like standing crow pose or whatever the heck it is. But I crow pose, I will tell you. So yoga 1 to 2 times a week, balance, isometrics, a lot of sweating because I do hot yoga, a lot of mindfulness in there. We also do a sound healing workshop before one of them. That's my little thing there is with my resistance training and my yoga. And I literally now have taken my weights where I used to go to the gym 6 days a week. I admit it. I now go 3 times a week, some maybe 4. And I do yoga 1 to 2 times a week because I'm doing my cardio the rest of the time because I will naturally default over to weights and blow everything else off. So I need to focus on my cardio. The way I like to do cardio is I think of it this, doing HIIT and sit. HIIT training is where you go all out from anywhere from 20 to 60 seconds. You recover for twice as long and you repeat. And I actually went and bought running shoes so I could start doing this outside. And I also got a rucking vest so I could start doing the next thing, which is zone 2 outside. So HIIT training, that's HIIT training, but there's a part of HIIT training called sit training, sprint interval training, that's even harder. And that is literally where you kill yourself for like 8 to 10 seconds, and then you walk it off, and then you do it again, and you walk it off. So I'm doing some sit and HIIT to accumulate at least 4 minutes of really hard, sometimes 8. And then after that, I'm moving into zone 2 for 20 to 30 minutes. And that's where you can keep your heart rates up, you're breathy, you're breathing hard, but you can carry on a conversation. That's when you know you're in zone 2. Now, the other time to do zone 2 is after meals. And so what I put into my practice, because I was like, oh, you got to walk after every meal. Well, then I was not doing it. I'm just being fully transparent here. So what I decided is I'm going to make sure every morning and every night that I do some self-care. Morning, I find it way easier to get the routine down. I do meditation. I do some positive reading. I do cold plunge, and then I go work out. Evening, I just decide I'm going to put one thing in. So maybe it's sauna one night it's ruck walking. So whatever it is, every night I do something. If I really am just getting in the way of myself, I can always just do red light therapy for 10 minutes. Something has to happen every night. There's always something, or a hot bath with Epsom salt bath. That's an easy default. But especially great if you can do this after a meal, if you can go and do some zone 2 after a meal, or even milder than zone 2. But a 20-minute walk after a meal can lower the blood sugar response to the meal, suck the carbs into your working muscles. Yay, yay. So that's fantastic. Now, there's one more thing here, and this is the one that I'm working on too, is learning new things, getting yourself out of your comfort zone, trying something different. So this could be trying pickleball, which we literally have a pickleball court, private pickleball court. We share a street with a neighbor, and I'm like it's like I still haven't tried it. So that could be, it's something that involves some agility, right? Some reaction time. So it could be ping pong, pickleball. I do paddle boarding. What is something that you can try that's new and different, that's going to take a little bit of learning too, because you want to be the old dog learning new tricks. So that's the other piece to put on in there. Now, it's not just how you work the muscles, it's also how you fuel them. This is super duper important. I will tell you, just like I think that it is just ridiculous, this 150 minutes of moderate exercise. No, lift heavy things. The other thing here is that you need to fuel too. And this idea that we need 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight is ridiculous. As we age, we need more protein, not less. We tend to eat less. So this has to be priority. You have to do protein first. And I want you to get 0.7 grams per 1 pound of target body weight. So whatever your ideal body weight to be, 0.7 grams to 1 pound of target body weight. Here's the deal. If you are vegan, vegetarian, go to the higher level. If you are trying to lose weight, go to the higher level. If you are working out hard, go to the higher level. I'd rather you err higher than lower. And you need that protein after that workout. So super important. The reason I have you go higher is because we need to make sure with you vegans, vegetarians, that you're getting the branched chain amines and especially the leucine that you need to trigger mTOR to trigger muscle protein synthesis. Just like protein's critical because you need the amino acids for the building blocks of muscle. And by the way, even if you're not working out, which you are because you are going to lift heavy things, right? That's why you're listening to this. Even if you weren't, if all you did was get your protein to optimal levels, you will increase your lean body mass. How cool is that? Think about what happens when you put the two together. And then you make sure that you're getting good carbohydrates to fuel muscle protein synthesis. Carbohydrates basically are that fuel, and they're also stored in your muscles for energy because when you're lifting heavy weights, you're not using fat, you're using carbs for that. When you're doing these explosive anaerobic moves, that's carbohydrate driven, not fat driven. The biggest time we use fat is when we are sitting around, right? That's when our body's the best fat burner. We need to be able to burn fat, burn sugar. And so you need those carbohydrates. We eat carbohydrates, we store them in our muscles so that we can use them when we are putting our body under stress. And so what kind of carbohydrates? Every day we need to make sure, along with getting at least 30 grams of protein at each meal, especially your breakfast when you break your fast, and your dinner, the bumper meals. Then if you need, like me, I'm 150 pounds. I get 150 grams of protein in a day. My breakfast and dinner tend to be about 50 grams of protein. I like to eat 50 grams at each meal. My low end that I'll get to is 120 grams. Carbs, you should have 2 fruit servings every day. And here's the thing, diversity matters. We know that a better gut microbiome, more diverse gut microbiome, things like exercise do this. By the way, a little bit of intermittent fasting, you got to make sure this isn't a daily thing because you need to make sure you're getting in enough protein for muscle protein synthesis, but 2 days a week. Shortened feeding window of like 6 to 8 hours is going to help you with gut microbiome diversity. Eating more plants, gut microbiome diversity, and that means you'll have better Bacteroides to Firmicutes ratio. Firmicutes makes you store fat. Bacteroides helps you be lean. So that's super helpful, is getting in at least 2 fruits every day. Rotate them, not the same fruit every day. And getting in at least 5 servings of non-starchy vegetables, cup raw, half cup cooked, broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, red peppers, endive. Eat from the rainbow, all the different polyphenols, all do different things. And then slow, low carbs, legumes, roots, that kind of thing. Close to nature as possible. a big question I get asked is, should I work out fast? It turns out for women, it's really actually a disadvantage for us. What you don't want to do is go eat a bunch and then go work out, because you only have so much blood and you want to make sure your blood's able to go to your working muscles. It's not sitting there going to digestion. But you are better off having something to eat prior to a workout. I find most women do way better with that. We are better generally at using fat during workouts than men anyway. So it's not how much fat you burn during the workout, it's how much fat you burn during the day. It's how much quality workout, how hard you can work out. And generally, if you eat an hour or so before a workout, you're going to have a better, heavier, harder workout. And that's what makes the difference. So I'm not a fan of fasted workouts. The things that I think are super important to take here to support, I use my paleo-inspired shake. And then I add in extra collagen. It's got collagen in it because it's bone broth protein, but I add an extra scoop because that gets me up to 30 grams of protein right there. Then I will add in, I use flax milk. That's called this Good Karma Protein Plus flax milk. So I'm getting extra protein there. When you're doing that, you're getting your branch chains in there as well, of course, because they're in that protein. Now, other things that I'm taking, creatine should be on everybody's list. The minute you're 50 plus, you should be taking creatine. Depending on your size, 3 to 5 grams a day. It takes you about a month to get up to tissue saturation. If you want to jumpstart that, then take the dose that you'll end up taking, take that 4 times a day for 5 days. So if you're a smaller person, say 120 pounds or less, 3 grams a day. If you're more than that, 5 grams a day. I take 5 grams of creatine monohydrate every single day. I take it along with something called GG. That's in my menopause support packet that helps anabolic hormone production, helps with bone density, helps with inflammation. So those two together are my big key products. The other thing that I use here is MitoPure by Timeline, because MitoPure by Timeline, I call it exercise in a bottle. I do not say that so that you will not exercise. But what it does is it helps your mitochondria actually go through mitophagy, because your mitochondria are always going through, just like your bones do this. Your body is breaking down and building up, breaking down and building up. Your mitochondria, your powerhouses of the cell, are doing this. And in your muscles, you have lots of mitochondria in your muscle cells, right? As you age, they break down more than they build up. And when you break them down, you should use those recycling products to build new mitochondria, right? To build new tissue. So MitoPure helps you do that, helps facilitate that process so that we are in that great stage of mitophagy, and we're not just breaking down or stuck there with all the cellular debris, stuck clogging things up so that you cannot go through mitophagy. So I use that. I also use water with my Electro Replenish. So I take that with me. I drink an electrolyte drink every day. And then I also do my vitamin C drink, but I don't drink it near my workout. I drink that way later in the day, because there's, just like cold plunging, I do cold plunging usually about 18 hours after a workout, because it can reduce remember, when you work out, you're doing microtearing, you're doing hormesis, you're stressing your body, and your body has to go through this process of rebuilding. And if you then all of a sudden go, I'm going to take a cold plunge, it can just shut that process off. So we don't want to do that. So I'll use that. Again, I'll do it in the morning. Then I take a hot shower after that to heat myself up, because I need to be warm to go into the gym. Other key important thing here is sleep. This is when we're raising growth hormone. This is when we're repairing. And then also important thing here is monitoring your HRV, heart rate variability. And if you see your heart rate, we used to monitor your resting heart rate. And if we saw your resting heart rate creeping up, we're like, oh, you're overtraining. Oh my gosh. This is now what you're going to do is monitor your sleep and your HRV and see how those are doing. And if you're getting issues with HRV, we might need to adjust your training. And then finally, if you can either get a massage or do some foam rolling, that can be super helpful too. The big takeaway here is to start thinking now, how do I want to be living at 100? And if I want to play full out at 100, what needs to happen? And what needs to happen is that you have to lift heavy things so that you build that muscle. Then you have to eat protein first, so you have the building blocks to build that muscle, and add creatine in there. And then you have to sleep like a baby so that your body can recover and repair and restore. There it is. That's the easy peasy formula, but this is not easy. Remember, you're lifting heavy things. And I'd love to hear from you how this is working for you, because I'm really on just like a mission to get people to stop focusing on losing weight. I still have to say this because people, again, that's what they look at. But again, once I get your attention, it's like, it's not about the weight loss. It's about knowing what your weight's made up of and putting on muscle. That's your focus. There you go. All right. I will see you next time. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to join me next time for more tools, tips, and techniques you can incorporate into everyday life to ensure you look and feel great, and more importantly, that you're built to last. And check me out on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and my website, jjvirgin.com. And make sure to follow my podcast so you don't miss a single episode at subscribetojj.com. See you next time.